Hey everyone, welcome back to Easylish, the podcast where we make learning English simple, natural, and actually fun. I'm Mia.
And I'm Tom. If this is your first time tuning in, this is the place where we break down English learning in a way that feels practical and real. No heavy textbook jargon. And if you've been with us before, welcome back. We're always happy to have you here, and we truly appreciate every single one of you listening in.
So, Tom, let me throw a question your way. Have you ever run into someone who just shuts down a conversation completely?
Oh, you mean the one word answer kind of people? Absolutely. More times than I'd like to admit.
Ugh, the worst. You ask them something, and they leave you with nothing to work with.
Exactly. In fact, I met one just last week, and let me tell you, it was painful.
Oh, now you've got me curious. Spill the story.
All right, so I was at this networking event trying to meet new people. I walk up to a guy, introduce myself, and ask the classic icebreaker. So, what do you do?
Solid opener. So, what did he say?
He just looks at me and says, I'm an engineer.
Okay, fair enough. Then what?
I followed up with, Cool, what kind of projects do you work on? And you can probably guess he goes, Just normal stuff.
Oh no, he actually said that?
Bingo. Word for word.
Ouch. Did you try to keep it going?
Of course, I asked, "Hey, how did you get into the field?" And he just shrugged and muttered, I don't know, just liked computers and
That's it? No story, no details, nothing?
nothing at all. I was tossing out conversation lifelines, but he let every single one sink. It honestly felt like I was talking to an automated chatbot.
That sounds brutal. It's like trying to keep a balloon floating, but no matter how many times you hit it up, it just drops straight back down.
Exactly. A good conversation is like keeping a fire alive. You need both people tossing in logs. If only one side is adding fuel while the other just stares, the fire dies out quickly.
That's such a great image. And you know what? That's usually when people start thinking, oh, maybe I'm just bad at conversations. But most of the time, it's not that. They just don't know how to keep the fire burning.
And that's when it hit me. Why not make an episode about this exact problem? Because so many people struggle with it. And the good news is, it's a skill anyone can learn.
Which means today's episode might just be a game changer.
Exactly. So let's get into it.
Perfect. Now, Tom, tell me this. What do you think really makes conversations die?
Well, there are a few big reasons, but one of the most common is what I call the filtering effect. That's when people hold back because they're worried about saying something wrong or sounding uninteresting.
Oh, yeah, it's like their brain sets up a security checkpoint, and every single thought has to pass inspection before it gets out.
Exactly. And the problem is they overthink so much that barely anything gets said at all.
Right. They start second guessing every word. Instead of letting the conversation flow naturally, they put up a mental traffic jam, and suddenly nothing moves forward.
And the irony is, the more they hesitate, the more awkward it feels, which makes it even harder to speak up. Their mind freezes, and before you know it, the conversation flatlines.
And of course, the other person might take that as, oh, they're not interested, when really it's just overthinking taking over.
Exactly. And then there's social anxiety. Some people get so nervous that their brain completely blanks. Instead of thinking of something to say, their mind spirals into questions like, do I sound boring? Do they even like me?
Until, boom, the brain just shuts down, like a phone overloaded with too many apps running at once.
That's the perfect comparison. The system crashes under pressure. And when that happens, people fall back on stiff, one line answers that don't leave any room to build a real conversation.
which is sad because they're afraid of being boring. But by barely saying anything, they create exactly the kind of flat, lifeless interaction they wanted to avoid.
And then there's another big one, not really listening. Some people aren't tuned in at all. They're just waiting for their turn to talk, or their mind is off in another world.
It's like playing tennis, but staring at the scoreboard instead of watching the ball. By the time it comes your way, you've got nothing.
Exactly. And because they weren't paying attention, they missed the little details, the hooks, that could have led to something deeper and more engaging.
Okay, so now we've seen why conversations often collapse. The real question is, how do we bring them back to life? All right, so let's get practical. We've just talked about why conversations sometimes fall flat, but what can you actually do about it? Today, we're giving you 3 powerful strategies that will completely change the way you hold conversations.
Yep. And the first one is simple but life changing: remove the filter. Most of us are so busy analyzing every word before we say it that we end up saying nothing at all.
Exactly. And I get it. It's easier said than done. But think about little kids. They don't sit around wondering, does this sound cool enough? They just blurt things out. And because of that, their conversations are playful, spontaneous, and full of energy.
Right? But somewhere along the way, adults lose that freedom. Especially in new situations, we become hyper aware of ourselves and hesitate before speaking.
And that hesitation, it's like creating a traffic jam in your brain. Instead of letting your thoughts come out naturally, you slam the brakes, analyze, and overthink until the moment passes.
Which usually ends in giving the dullest, safest answer possible, or worse, nothing at all. And ironically, in trying to sound interesting, people end up sounding less engaging because they filtered out all the natural personality that makes them unique.
So true. And here's the secret: most people aren't judging you nearly as much as you think. Honestly, they're too wrapped up in themselves, how they sound, how they look, what they should say next. Once you realize that, you start to feel freer.
Exactly. So the big question: how do you actually get rid of the filter?
One way is to practice talking without overthinking in low pressure situations. Chat with a friend, a coworker, or even a cashier. Instead of pausing to perfect your response, just let the words flow.
And if you struggle with that, here's a neat trick: verbalize your thoughts. Start sentences with, "I was just thinking about," or "that reminds me of." This way, you're training yourself to keep talking without stopping to self edit.
I love that. Another exercise is to challenge yourself to talk for 30 seconds straight without pausing. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's about getting comfortable with words flowing out instead of shutting them down.
The key takeaway here: stop aiming for perfection. Conversation should feel fluid, not rehearsed.
Exactly. And that brings us to the second strategy, one of my favorites, the Pratfall Effect.
Oh, yes, this one flips the way people think about mistakes. The Pratfall Effect is a psychological principle that says people actually like you more when you make small mistakes.
Right? Because perfection can feel intimidating, almost robotic. You might respect someone who seems flawless, but you don't necessarily feel comfortable around them.
But when someone stumbles over a word, laughs at themselves, or admits they forgot something, it makes them instantly more human and relatable.
Exactly. And comedians are masters at this. Have you noticed how they'll trip on stage, mispronounce something, or poke fun at themselves? The audience loves them for it.
Because imperfection is connection. And this is huge for conversations. So many people hold back out of fear of making mistakes, when in reality, mistakes make conversations flow more naturally.
And if you mess up, just own it. Maybe you mispronounce a word. Say, wow, my brain just glitched there. Laugh it off and move on. Suddenly, what could have been awkward becomes lighthearted.
And especially for English learners, this is key. Native speakers don't care if you make mistakes, they respect the effort and admire your courage to speak at all.
I can vouch for that. When I was learning another language, I used to stress so much about being perfect. But the moment I let that go and just started talking, my confidence grew like crazy.
Exactly. So the lesson here? Stop chasing perfection, embrace mistakes, be real, and people will connect with you much more.
Beautifully said. And now, let's move to the third strategy, which is probably the most practical tool for keeping conversations alive: threading.
Oh, threading is a game changer. It's basically the secret to making conversations flow instead of hitting dead ends.
Here's how it works. Threading means taking something from what the other person just said and pulling on that thread to expand the conversation.
Yeah, every conversation has little threads woven into it. If you spot them, you can keep talking endlessly. If you don't, the chat just dies.
For example, if someone says, I went to Italy last summer, and you just reply, cool, the conversation is over before it began.
Exactly. But if you notice the threads, you can pull on them. Oh, what was your favorite part of the trip? Or did you try any new food? Or even, I've always wanted to go. What surprised you most? Suddenly, you've got multiple paths to explore.
And the best part is, you don't need to fake it. If you're genuinely curious, these threads pop out naturally.
I actually tried this at a party recently. Someone mentioned they were learning guitar. Now, I don't know much about guitars, but instead of saying nice and moving on, I asked, what made you want to start? What's the hardest part? Do you have a song you dream of playing someday?
Perfect example. You turned a simple statement into a rich conversation with layers to explore.
Exactly. And once you practice, it becomes second nature. You start seeing threads everywhere, and you'll never run out of things to say again.
So, the key takeaway here: look for the threads, ask open ended questions, stay curious. That's how you keep conversations alive. All right, that was a lot to take in. Today we've covered three big ideas: removing your filter so you can speak more freely, embracing imperfection so people actually find you more likable, and using threading to keep conversations alive and flowing.
Yeah, those strategies are game changers. But before we wrap up, let's slow it down and review some of the key vocabulary we use today. We want to make sure you not only understand the concepts, but can also use the words confidently in your own conversations.
Exactly. So let's go through a few of the tricky ones. First up, spontaneity. That means acting without overthinking or planning everything out in advance. Example: John's spontaneity surprised everyone when he booked a last minute flight to Paris.
Good one. Next word, self conscious. This describes being overly aware of yourself, usually because you're worried about what others think. Example: Emma felt self conscious about wearing glasses in school until she realized nobody actually cared.
Here's another important one: bottleneck. A bottleneck is something that slows down progress or flow, like a blockage. Example: traffic was smooth until an accident created a bottleneck on the highway.
And how about monotonous? That's when something is dull, repetitive, and lacking variety. Example: listening to the same playlist every morning made his runs feel monotonous.
Then we've got authentic, which means genuine, real, or true to its origin. Example: her grandmother's recipe gave the dish an authentic homemade flavor.
Love that one. Next up, relatable. Something is relatable when it's easy to connect with or understand. Example, the comedian's jokes were so relatable that the whole audience laughed nonstop.
Here's one more, rigid. It means stiff or inflexible. Example, the company's rigid dress code required employees to wear suits even during the summer heat.
And then there's stalls, which means something comes to a stop or slows down. Example, the project stalls every time they wait for the manager's approval.
Another good one, mutual, which means shared by both people. Example, Lisa and Mark ended their relationship on mutual terms, without hard feelings.
And finally, intuitive. That means something feels natural or easy to understand without needing much explanation. Example, the new phone's design is so intuitive that even my grandmother figured it out in minutes.
And that's our vocabulary roundup for today.
These words are super useful, especially if you want to sound more natural and confident in everyday conversations.
Exactly. And don't forget, conversation is a skill. The more you practice, the more natural and intuitive it becomes.
So here's our challenge for you. In your next conversation, try applying one of the three strategies we talked about. Remove the filter, embrace imperfection, or use threading. Notice how it changes the way the conversation feels.
And of course, if you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you subscribed, left us a quick review, or shared it with a friend who might need it.
That's all for today, but your English journey doesn't stop here.
Right. To keep going, click on the next episode or check out the other videos we've carefully picked for you.
Thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll see you next time on Easylish.